So my name is Thomas Rhiel. I am one of the founders of this collection of consonants here called Bklynr. Let's see. So there's the glamour shot. That's me and my co-founder Rhiel Sussman. Some background on the two of us. We are college buddies, and this is an evenings and weekends type of project with help from a lot of friends. So we have full-time jobs, and during the day I am a designer and developer at The Atavist, which is another kind of interesting company in the paid content media space. But when I, with Raf, founded Bklynr about a year ago, I was doing something else. I was, after school, I got a technical job at Google out of school and was doing that for a while, but was really missing the sort of media and publishing space that I thought I was going to go into out of school. And so the two of us wanted to do some sort of web project, some sort of magazine type thing. Around that time, we had seen a lot of activity in sort of the small-scale paid content space. 29th Street was on our radar. Also, a few other projects. There was the science project called Matter, M-A-T-T-E-R, that kickstarted and did very well. There was this tech magazine called The Magazine by Marco Arment that had launched. And these publications were using a sort of a magazine issue-based model where they put out a few issues a month. Each issue would have only a few articles, and you'd pay something like $2 a month. And we thought, hey, well, we could do that. We have a lot of friends who are writers and photographers and could do great stuff in a lot of ways. So we decided to give it a shot. It was about a year ago that we put up a page like this. We decided not to do a Kickstarter for a number of reasons. We just decided to roll our own. So we put up a page that sort of told our story, tried to convince people that what we were about to do was a cool idea. And we used this service called TinyPass. If you've heard of it, you might have heard of it through Andrew Sullivan, whose blog The Dish uses TinyPass for subscriptions. We use that. And we were collecting pre-subscriptions in the month of March. This was before we launched a year ago, with the aim of raising at least $10,000. Funny thing about this little bar chart here is that we didn't have a mechanism for actually automatically capturing new subscriptions, so I had to sit by the computer and refresh it millimeter by millimeter every time someone contributed. So anyway, about a year ago, we had enough money to get going, and we decided to do it. So one question that we're asked a lot is why produce more content about the borough of Brooklyn, which is probably the most media-saturated, over-discussed place on Earth. It's true. However, we actually took a close look at that. This is something that we did for one of our early issues. This is, of course, the familiar shape of the borough of Brooklyn. And what we did was use the New York Times API to figure out how the borough has been covered over the last 30 years or so. And unsurprisingly, while coverage of the borough has increased, that's this stuff here, the concentration of coverage has zeroed in on a few specific neighborhoods. And frankly, Rhiel and I were kind of sick of hearing about those neighborhoods, and we wanted to reach out and tell other stories about things that were happening elsewhere in what is New York's most populous borough. And so we've covered all sorts of stuff. We've covered community development in Brownsville. We've covered traditional Russian baths down in the Sheepshead Bay area. We've covered Brooklyn's underground and not quite legal porn industry. We've covered the proliferation of homeless shelters in East New York, which is upsetting residents because there's supposed to be this statute in New York where homeless shelters are distributed evenly throughout the city, but in fact that's not the case. And we've covered environmental activism around the Gowanus Canal area. One thing that we've really tried to do is emphasize visuals and design. We don't produce a print product, but I think there's really something, I think a great way to build a brand and distinguish yourself as a publication is to invest time and resources into those things. I think we live in a world in which so many aspects of the web feel identical because everyone is using the same type of WordPress templates. And so it's been handy that we can basically roll our own article template designs for anything we want to do. And so, for example, when we had Bill de Blasio write a piece about his vision for Brooklyn before he was elected mayor, it was really easy for us to just add annotations to the side. I say it was easy for us. I'm a developer, and so it's important to me to get these sort of to take advantage of opportunities that present themselves like this. And then let's see. So this is something else that we had done. We've done a number of infographics. And actually, I'll show you this one. This one, I think, turned out pretty well. So just a sec. Bear with me. Okay. So this one was this is one that I whipped up when Stop and Frisk was in the news. So what this is a breakdown of looking at stop and frisk data, who is actually being stopped and where they're being stopped. So this is what borough it was in. Here's a breakdown by race of people who were stopped, age. I won't go through all these categories and bore you to death. But I think my favorite was a gun found. And so anyway, one advantage of producing only a handful of stories every month, and to realize I haven't mentioned it specifically, we do 2 issues a month and 3 stories per issue, is that we can take the time to do stuff like this. Ralph and I didn't have the time to start a venture that was going to be an around-the-clock blogging enterprise. We wanted to be able to sit back and produce thoughtful work, and we wanted to be able to take the time to do stuff like this. Another infographic thing that has gotten some attention, I'll show you that in a second, is this map of Brooklyn that I did, so I'll show you that now. All right, so this is using city data to lay out all of the buildings in Brooklyn. And what's cool about it is you can zoom in, pan around, and see, according to the New York City, City of New York, when each building in Brooklyn was built. This one sort of it was surprising to us. This one really sort of took off, and was mentioned all over. And drove a lot of subscriptions. In general, we're a subscription-based model. It's $2 a month or $20 a year. We have a steady stream of subscriptions that come in as people discover articles, regular articles that we publish. But we've had a few hits, and this was one of them that really drive a lot of traffic and drive subscriptions. So I would say that our subscription, if you look at a curve of subscriptions as they come in, it's pretty bursty or hilly, and this is one of the hills. I'm also happy to say that this was picked recently to be in the upcoming Best American Infographics 2014, which is pretty cool. Anyway, that's one of the things that I'm proud of that we've done in our first year. All right, back to this. So, if I can go back to full screen. Okay, yeah. So the question is, are people willing to pay for this stuff? We have a paywall model. You can read 1 story a month for free. After that, you're asked to chip in. The answer is yes. People are willing to pay for this stuff. I think as Emily at 29th Street was saying, even if people don't necessarily have to pay for content, if they understand what you're doing and like what you're doing, they will feel, they'll be interested in supporting what you're doing. People can read about Brooklyn all over. But I think that we have, I don't know, I think that we've established a voice that people are responding to, and I think people are interested in the project. One thing that we took from Andrew Sullivan is the idea that we ask people to pay their $20 a year, but we leave it as a form for people to fill in. If they're interested in paying more to support what we're doing, they can. And all the time we get numbers that are higher than $20, and not just from our parents. I think our average is somewhere between 25 and $30, which is awesome. That's this thing. Oh, so on the subject of revenue streams. So to try to capitalize on the success of this map thing, we decided to have it printed up and set up a little Etsy shop and are selling these prints. And they've done really, really well. I think Maps of Brooklyn is a pretty solid genre as far as Etsy is concerned. And people have responded. So again, it's an evenings and weekends type of project. It's something I love doing and I'm passionate about doing. It's not something that can pay my rent yet. But I think in the next year, or year two, we're interested in more stuff like this, more merch. Probably going to do events with writers of our pieces and any experts that they've met along the way, reporting stories to try to talk about some issues that are happening in the borough. We'd love to do sponsored events. So we're just going to keep this enterprise rolling. I think we'd love to be able to pay our contributors more. We'd love to be able to invest in more time-consuming journalism. And I think as we grow, we'll be able to do those things. And that's it for me.
Great. Thanks, Thomas. Thank you. Couple questions.
One here.
Yeah.
Thanks. Thanks. That was a really great presentation. I'm curious, though, what language or platform are you using for your data visualizations for those really cool infographics? How'd you do it?
Sure. So it depends. The map thing is uses this map making tool called TileMill in conjunction with this map service called Mapbox. I see some nods in the audience. It's a really great tool for making that sort of thing. There are a number of other tools for mapping. There's this great service called CartoDB. The dots moving around thing, that was using this JavaScript library called D3, developed in part by this guy, Mike Bostock at the New York Times. Yeah, so it depends. There are different tools for different jobs.
You said that you had opted to roll your own as opposed to using Kickstarter. I was wondering if you could expand on that a little more and tell us what went into that decision.
Yeah, at the time, we felt that there was a sort of Kickstarter fatigue, and maybe that was just a crazy notion that was floating around my sort of circle of people with whom I was speaking when we were talking about this. But there were a lot of Kickstarter projects, a lot of them quite successful, as was the case with Haller, as we just heard. Others not as successful. There was, I can't remember the name, and I can't even remember the exact pitch, but there was a high-profile Kickstarter project that crashed and burned in a way that we felt was ominous. And we also, frankly, didn't feel that we had the time to be shipping T-shirts or hosting meetings with an editorial board type thing that you might offer as a perk in a Kickstarter. We really just wanted to sell a subscription to the actual product in a simple way. And so we felt doing it the way we did it was a pretty easy and effective way to go. In retrospect, we probably would have had more exposure had we gone the Kickstarter route. So I don't know if I would have done it the same way again, but it felt like the right move at the time.
Can you talk about the breakdown of annual versus monthly subscriptions? And then second question, a bit about your demo.
Yeah, sure. Breakdown. We actually have many more annual subscribers than monthly subscribers. I don't know the exact ratio. And I think it's because, as I was saying earlier, the people who are responding to this project and who are interested in paying for it are the kind of people who are already interested enough to pay for it that they are willing to put down the $20. Which is to say, $2 is not a lot of money to pay per month, but I think there's a sort of psychological barrier that needs to be broken when someone is sitting in front of a computer screen and then is asked to get his or her credit card out. And so once that barrier is broken, I think $20 per year is a pretty reasonable fee for this sort of thing. As far as demographic data, I wish that we had a better sense of it. Obviously, on Google Analytics, we can see that most people are from the New York City area, but we haven't done enough surveys to really have a fine-grained sense of that.
Any other questions? Yep.
At this point, how much of your stories are written by freelancers and versus your friends? Because you talked about you're just friends, writers, photographers.
Sure. So a lot of them are written by freelancers who happen to be friends or friends of friends. I imagine this is the case with a lot of people in this room. I grew up, not grew up, but I went to school with a bunch of people who always knew that they wanted to be writers or journalists. And I'm still in touch with people who are in journalistic circles. And so when I say my friends, it's true that they are my friends and we hang out, but it's also true that they know what they're doing when it comes to writing a story. We've had contributors who work full time for magazines like The New Yorker and The Atlantic and things like that. So, yeah.
So you accept, how many like pitches do you get from them? Are they pitching you, or are you?
It works both ways. Sometimes we'll have an idea for a
Okay,
story that we want to
pitches.
do, and we'll try to fit a writer to that story. Other times it's the opposite.
And I have another question. Do you think you would ever expand this to Queens, like a Queenser?
A QNSR.
Yeah.
We've thought about it. We thought about the idea broadly of expanding to other boroughs and other places.
I just think of that infographic you have of Brooklyn, and you could possibly do that with Queens.
You know,
and
it was-
probably be even worse.
Yeah, the thing is that I had all the data necessary to do that, and my Excel spreadsheet kept crashing, so I decided to limit it to Brooklyn. That's true. I think we're trying to get the recipe right in Brooklyn before we do any sort of expansion, and I'm not lacking for ways to make this better. I'm sorry if I seem a little tired right now. Thursday is 2 Thursdays a month we put out an issue, and this was one of them. And so I was up late last night, which is just to say that there's a lot of work that goes into this, and there's a lot of work that I think will continue to go in this as we keep growing it.
Looks like you guys have a lot of success with the data visualizations of the sort. Do you think you're going to move into like motion graphics and video, and like what's next for you guys?
We'd love to do that. I personally have no skills in the motion graphics or video area, and the people that I've spoken to about those things are interested, but they're upfront about the fact that it's extremely time-consuming to do that sort of work. So we're definitely interested. We'll just see what pans out. All right, thanks.